All right, good evening. We will go ahead and start the February Commission for the Arts meeting at 5:01. Do the call to order, a roll call.
Let the record show all commissioners are present except Commissioners Kadakia and Marakovitz, who are absent.
Thank you. And we'll stand to pledge the allegiance. Are there any special presentations or proclamations?
There are none.
Any oral communications?
There are no oral communications today.
Thank you. And there are no changes to the agenda that I'm aware of, are there?
There are no changes to the agenda.
So we'll move on to the approval of the minutes from January 6th of 2025.
Motion to approve minutes?
I'll second.
Let the record show that the motion passes unanimously with all commissioners voting yes.
Thank you. So we will move on to action items. 8A, our annual work plan. There are a few items, just a few to go over tonight. So it should be a full meeting. Rather than go through and make any updates line by line, I think we'll jump into the two bigger updates from the Sculpture Loan Program and about the artisan residency potential. And then we will review our outcomes for the 2024-25 work plan. And if there are any additional updates from any ad hoc during that time, since we will be moving through line by line, those can be made then. And then we will have a conversation about this and 2026 work plan after that. So get ready. I meant to stop and get chocolate for everyone, but it didn't happen. But we'll do a 7th inning stretch here for sure. Does this one work? Okay. So as you know, Carla, Vicky, and I have been working on the Sculpture Loan Program, and we wanted to give this update. This is a slide presentation that is fairly worked through, but it's still a draft form. And we're super excited to show it to you, and also are very curious for your input, both on content and about the flow of the presentation and kind of the storytelling of the presentation. There's a few little hiccups at the end as far as slides. I might jump in back and forth, but bear with me. Okay, so we'll go to the program, which we're so lucky to have. There's been so much work done before any of us were commissioners, and it's this great opportunity where artists are able to exhibit pieces on loan in Encinitas that they might not otherwise have any place for in the town. And residents and the city gets to benefit from having these really amazing pieces of work that otherwise we probably could not afford to show. Next slide. So despite it being such an awesome program, it's starting, and so there's always little hiccups and areas that can be made better. So we've placed 6 sculptures very successfully. with the existing process, but still we identified that like and dislike play too large of a role. There was just a lot of comments from the public and from leadership that that were based, we felt, too much on preference. And Encinitas can do more to increase artist participation.
Can I ask a quick question? I know we're just at the top of this, but it seemed as though reading through this, and at the end, I think it talks about how participation from the beginning is really important, community participation. So when you say it's too much about like and dislike, is that as opposed to getting people involved from the beginning so that it doesn't come to the point where people are giving a thumbs up, thumbs down on something they haven't seen yet? Is that?
It's a great question. We will get into that in the presentation. So I think what I'll do is run through the presentation and then we can ask questions at the end. But yeah, the early, I don't know, Carla, did you want to say something?
Well, we can wait till the end, but I think that was a really good question. So maybe we'll get to the end and then we can come back to that, because I think it's a very important distinction between like and dislike and whether it fits the mission, which we're going to be getting to later. So yeah, we'll come back to that, but thank you for asking.
The other key component of your question, I think, is really important, is the when, right? When do you get public input? How do you sustain public input? How do you sustain all of that throughout the process, not just at the end? So there were two main areas. One is refining the process, like any program needs to work well in order to reap all of the benefits. And so that's refining the process, and then we also want to increase the number of proposals. So refining the process, again, a huge thing about gathering public input on the role of public art. We want to expand the outreach, both in increasing the visibility of the call for the artists and letting the public know about all of the avenues in which they can participate. And then establish clear program goals and selection criteria. So just as much transparency as possible. Next slide, please. The next thing the other side of that is to increase the number of proposed sculptures, simplify the process, enhance promotion and publicity, and increase the stipends and potentially cover insurance cost. Next slide. Those are kind of overviews. So how to go about this? We were really clear we didn't need to rewrite the wheel here. So we looked at a lot of alternative strategies from similar cities, Carlsbad, La Jolla, and then also cities across the nation of our size. Most of what follows is standard practice. Some of it is very unique to us and the process that we came up with. So yeah, we didn't want to have our biases get in the way. So when figuring out, what do people want out of a public art program, we wanted to make sure that however we were asking, we could really get meaningful answers. So we were super lucky that we had two experts. One is an insights expert, a consultant who lives here in Leucadia, who volunteered her time to work with us. We developed with her a discussion guide to speak with the public in varied formats to get really base question answered so that we could understand what the community values were when it came to public art. We also spoke with a survey methodologist, showed her the survey the public survey as it was, got her input. She asked, what we were trying, the difference between specification and implementation. So it's like, what are you trying to achieve? What answers are you trying to answer? And how are you going about it? And we'll talk about that more later. So next slide. The colored square rectangle on the right, why don't you just go ahead and take a minute and read those 4 paragraphs, please. So we did focus groups, we did one-on-one interviews, we did random intercepts at different locations all throughout Encinitas. And we also looked back and reviewed the comments submitted during the last couple of processes from when the public had written comments in the public survey. The discussion guide was designed again to kind of understand what role public art should play in the city and how it should benefit the community. We wanted to do lots of open-ended questions, such as the bottom, public art in Encinitas could be blank, blank, and blank. The role one was also kind of fun and interesting, where we said if you could imagine that, public art played a role in the community, who would they be? And we gave them a list of maybe 30 potentials and said you can make up your own as well. And so it was everywhere from leader, teacher, connector, storyteller. And so that was interesting. And then we dug deeper as far as what does that word mean to you? So we kept going, and it was a pretty interesting approach as far as kind of trying to understand people's base values and what they wanted to feel and experience, rather than what's your favorite piece of art. Next slide, please. So in the presentation, this would kind of be one of those pop-up things where you got a quote at a time. But yeah, be inspiring, beautiful, and unite us in our uniqueness. Give your day a lift. I wake up feeling one way, and then a piece of art changes my mood. I want to see public art that reflects different emotions. Be everywhere, unregulated, inspiring, and available to all. And these we picked out of so many quotes because there were multiples that had these same sentiments over and over again. Be reflective of the culture here, and also be a bridge to something bigger. So this bottom one I thought was kind of fun. The American cities are becoming more and more similar. I'd say world cities are becoming more and more similar. Public art is a way to show your town is unique, not just the same street everywhere. Then we asked what role, and storyteller. Storytellers have carried important knowledge through generations, can bring deeper meaning to our lives. Connector was a big one. Visionary. I'm kind of letting everyone read it too. And then Colette, before you move on to the next slide, just for dramatic effect, if you're comfortable with this, close your eyes for a sec. And we can speed through up to the neck, like a few slides up. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. This one. Thank you. Now you open your eyes. So from all of that, these are the key insights we gathered, and kind of saw. We worked again with the insights consultant to say, okay, what do we do with all of this information, all of this data? So we poured through it, and we kind of tried to consolidate and see what came to the surface as far as being the most representative. And it was interesting because a lot of people had a lot of the same feelings about what they wanted to see, and just how it could really shift their perspective or their day or their moment. And also this inspiring, joyful, and accessible was a big one. And so People didn't mind the idea of being challenged emotionally or intellectually, but I think people, for the most part, most comments were saying we want to come across something and just be like, oh, I feel this is cool, like having that experience where just you get a little hit of endorphins, and then really reflective of our place and of this town and of its, whether it's from history to the present, whether it's a small story or a big story. And again, we're so lucky to live in a place where there are so many artists and art, and now with Pacific View, nonetheless, no matter where you go, so much of the imagery that we're met with in public is commercial imagery. And so this is really an opportunity to bump up against and be in relationship to something over time that is not that. Okay, so then if you want to close your eyes or look away again, we consolidated that all into a mission statement.
Will there be chocolate on our desks when we open our eyes? Or?
If you hold all questions till the end. All right, so we came up with this mission along with the Insights consultant as well. Public art in Encinitas tells a story that shifts our moment in an uplifting way, unifies us in new perspectives, and celebrates our unique culture. So those three points we felt were very representative of all of the age ranges we talked to all of the different types of communities within all of the areas of Encinitas. And then we thought, okay, this is really cool. Now we actually have something that came from the community about what they want that we can use to elicit artist proposals. We can use as a way of choosing pieces, and we can use as a way of engaging community discussion and programming and everything like that onward. So next slide. So again, the mission works reduces like and dislike judgment. Instead of individual opinions, which we heard a lot of in the last 2 rounds, it really has to do with public values and community values. So it's kind of this underlying thing of, okay, you may not end up liking each and every sculpture that's picked, but it does speak to what do you want to feel? What do you want to believe? What do you believe? What's the benefit of public art? What's the purpose of public art? Again, transparent criteria. It helps artists to submit work that does align with this mission. It's not so much of a guessing game for them. The specification implementation, again, it succeeds in giving the largest public what they feel is important and gives the juring criteria, a bit redundant there. And then there's a huge application beyond only this program. So this mission can be used in similar public art programs. We've talked about a mural program and such. So without having to reinvent the wheel for each program. Next slide, please. Okay, so then how does this all get implemented? It's not so far off from what exists now. There's a submission phase, a qualification stage, a feedback stage, then all of us making a decision and recommendation to council, and then ongoing community involvement. And that piece I think is really exciting because the gist of this program is that these sculptures are installed for 2 years, and during that time a lot can happen with them. And again, relationships change to pieces, if they have really affected someone's walk or life or experience of a place or of other people around them, we will get to hear those stories and record that information and record that input in lots of other ways. Okay, so I focused on that a little bit longer than I thought. Next slide, please. So again, it's just a much simpler process. If you read under the streamlined application process down on the right, the proposed, artists will provide a single statement focused on how their sculpture aligns with the program's mission. And done, basically. You know, obviously, through the application process, how heavy, how tall, how is it made. Currently, they have to have lengthy descriptions over a series of questions that sometimes can feel a little redundant and somewhat subjective. Again, not bad, we're just aiming for better. Next slide. Okay. So in this stage, just as it happens presently, city staff will review it, kind of make sure that the proposals hit all requirements and take out any red flags. Then it will go to a jury panel review, as it also does, where the ad hoc will be joined by community members, one member from each area of Encinitas. And from the big pool of submissions will be just drawn down to 10 to 15 sculptures. And again, the criteria will basically be using the mission statement. They'll also have site briefs so that they can consider the specifics of each site and what fits best, and ensure that at least 2 fit for each site. Next slide, please. Then skip that one. Okay, so yeah, public input is so important, and let's make it meaningful. So this speaks to your question, Jim, a bit, and we've already gotten a lot of early and ongoing input. It was a tremendous lift that I think none of us realized we were quite getting into, but it was very fun to see Carla geek out. She became like a, leaping 10-year-old, just talking to everyone and also trying not to give her input too much, so we were just gathering information. But just very exciting always to have feet on the ground and to hear what people have to say. And, like we had one conversation with a group of high school boys, and they just blew our mind. We were just, the things that they were saying about, how everyone can think differently, and it's important to be met with different things that you might not choose yourself, or things that you might not necessarily ever stop and look at normally. And anyway, engage all communities. We're so thrilled to have the people who are like dialed in on city happenings and show up to city council meetings. But there's a huge part of Encinitas that doesn't always know about this stuff. And so it was good to just go randomly to places and talk to people who might not even go to an art event or, whatever it is. Again, ask these big questions so you get the underlying truths. Strategies for continued involvement is something we've thought a lot about, and multiple ways for the public to comment. So having avenues where we reach out to the public so that they can give the commission comment, that they can come to our meetings, and likewise. And then from there, next. So with the public survey, we felt there were some real limitations to it. Again, and this slide I might change in the future. I'm kind of curious to hear your feedback as far as like just using examples from the past surveys. Two works of arts were always put next to each other, and so if people really loved one, they were incentivized to score the other lower. And so it the public survey in that way kind of highlights preference, and again, not purpose. A low-scored sculpture might get stigmatized, right? Like you see a sculpture, a picture, and then you see a score next to it. And then in your mind, or in our mind, or in council's mind, that's a bad sculpture. And actually, no, that could be an amazing sculpture for another round or for another location. Online public comments, I think public comments are so important, and it also, especially the non-in-person ones, do open up the door for some vitriol. And we read some that were just didn't feel very supportive of the process, and certainly not the artists who were putting themselves forward. Then the other thing is that when we were looking at other cities, how's everyone doing here with me? Okay. It's really standard practice to place short-term loans of artwork without public survey, hardly without any public input. Usually it's for commissioned pieces that have a hefty price tag and are going to be there for a really long time. And I think those are the main points there. So we thought long and hard about it, and I actually pushed back really hard in my mind for months about the public survey, and we decided to go a different route. So if you'll scroll down to the next slide that has public notice on it, this one. So the same avenues that have been used to notify people of the survey will be used to notify the public about the commission meeting where the proposals will be discussed. We really want to get people to come to these meetings. We really want to be the first sifting before council. And there will also be an email portal set up where the public can leave comments that the commission can read. So we won't be without public comment. We won't be without public eyes on these pieces before decisions are made. But we're not suggesting that a public survey be put out. And then, Colette, if you go back up to what was the previous slide. Yep. So again, proposals will come in, they'll go to staff, then they'll go to a jury panel. 10 to 15 will be chosen to then go to the commission. And each of us will get a commission, we're calling it a survey, but something that you can fill out at home. So you can take time with it, sit, read the artist statement, look at multiple photographs, read the jury panel's recommendations, also read these site briefs. So we didn't, I don't have a visual for the site brief, but this on the left is a good example for Lone Jack Road. This is a placed sculpture that we're lucky to have. There's also been a lot of public comment about it that has not been overly enthusiastic. I went and visited the site, I forget which month, this is my photo, and I thought, oh, wow. The only other times I visit this site is when I'm driving past it real quick to go on a hike somewhere else, or in a different season, and look, the trees, like you can not see that sculpture. When I went, like I have a series of photographs that would be included in this site brief and just say, hey, these trees lose their leaves. There's months at a time when it's brown, varied browns, cast shadows, and so we do not recommend, probably don't put a brown sculpture there. Things like that are beyond just, this site requires this weight and height, which will also be included. And of course, skate park, near a playground, near traffic, make sure that it's safe as far as light hitting it, all of those sorts of things. But a little bit more than just having an image in your mind of, oh yeah, I know where that sculpture is going, but really like in depth and unique to the realities of placing sculpture, which is in the round. And then we'll also review past comments from prior rounds. So we'll just keep that as an ongoing tally. And then each commissioner will submit that back to Colette or to staff. It will be consolidated and put on our next agenda so that, again, the public can see that there, can read what we each think, can see the site briefs, can make some decision, come up with their feedback for our meeting. And then next slide. And next slide. And then we will hold either at a regular or special public commission meeting meeting where we will receive public comments, discuss all the material, and make a recommendation to council. So that will be a more robust discussion, hopefully, with the community as well. And then City Council will make the final decision. Next slide, please. So again, we love this idea that you're engaging the sculptures over time, and that enhances public engagement and appreciation of the sculptures, of the work that goes into it, and also the connection to the program and the benefits to the artists. So we'd want to do artist talks, have the artists whose sculptures got placed give artist talks at art night, just do lots of social media promotion, maybe circle back with a class at Pacific View. There's just so many ways that can be tapped. And then, this is every 2 years. So while the mission statement may not need to be revamped every 2 years, I think it's important to know that things change, public wants change, and so we would continue to make adjustments as needed, and probably leave in there that the public can be talked to again and again as it goes on. Next slide. So just to recap, this new process defines the goal of public art programming in Encinitas. Again, it's about telling a story. It's about connecting us, about all those things. Ensures clarity and transparency in the selection process, reducing late-stage objections, and attracts a broader range of artist submissions through clearer guidelines and better support. So that is what we've been up to. Okay, I would love your feedback.
If you don't mind me jumping in, I have a couple questions and comments. First of all, awesome job on this. It looks really good, and obviously a lot of thinking and great insight went into it, so really good. I really enjoyed this being walked through it. One small question, so you mentioned community members from each district being on the jury panels. How are those, how do you envision they're being chosen or recruited? Because you're going to have one person from each council district, I gather.
Currently, staff does that. So do you want to answer that?
In the current or most recent jury panel, there was some recommendations from different organizations, and some of it was reaching out to members of the community and asking if there was anyone who had an interest so that we could have that equal representation. It was not as easy as we had anticipated that it would be, because not everyone was available and some people were really interested but had other priorities. So if the commission has an alternate suggestion as to how those 5 people are determined, that could certainly be part of your recommendations.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great idea. We talked about how do you really get each feel, and we talked about Sun Vista is right across from an HOA. Like, we could reach out to the HOA and say, hey, can we put this out? Is there someone on there with an arts background who wants to come and be on? There's different ways. So that's something that I think would make it a stronger and good to have an answer for council.
Thanks. Just on the page that talks about key insights, one thing one of the quotes mentions surprising, that the person appreciated public art being a surprise, kind of not encountering something unexpected. And I think that came up a lot in the comments in our last round. And I wondered if that, it's not a big deal, but I wondered if that might be worth adding to kind of those keywords when you're talking about, inspiring. I don't have that page up, but there was a few adjectives used. It just feels like that seems to be like an important thing that, maybe it's implicit, but I don't know. I just feel as though that maybe could be merit being emphasized. I thought there's a really great point about the application beyond this program for this process, because not only would it make similar decision-making processes easier, but it also would kind of bring it would really unify, I feel, the art that's eventually chosen across different, whether it's a loaner, commission, or whatever, because you were using the same criteria. And the thing about not really doing the surveys as we've done in the past, it always does feel weird to me to look at the numbers of however many people weigh in and say, well, this piece is 63.1% better than the other one, or whatever. So that is pretty different, but I really support that idea. One small question was, I wondered about the anonymous nature of the commissioner surveys. Is that does that feel important?
Yeah, good point. That it would be anonymous, so you'd fill it out, send it to Colette, and then it would be consolidated, but our names wouldn't be on it.
Okay.
Unless we all talked about, yeah, okay.
I mean, yeah. I just wondered if somehow that might be taken to mean, well, why can't you stand behind your opinions? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
so-
that's why I was about to say that's totally up for. I'm happy to put my name on it myself, so I think that could also just be a decision. I mean, I guess process of elimination. So if someone doesn't want their name on it and everyone else does it,
Right.
then too bad for you. But so it's probably better to vote on that. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was more about not wanting the public to be influenced by any one particular opinion. Because, I don't know, that's part of it.
Yeah. Because they might know the person or know their background or whatever. Yeah. Okay. Just putting that
But
out.
totally, I'm open to it. I don't, Carl or Vicky. Okay.
I don't think there's any reason to, I mean, I understand what you're saying about standing behind it, but I think as a group, they're compiling it, they're synthesizing this information. And we're not trying to get individual points, we're trying to get a group perspective. So
Yeah.
I think and I also think that the more you give specific attributed quotes to different people, then you open it up to more options for a person not liking a particular person or, having a problem, I just think that it's an important buffer.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can see that. As I say, kind of my only reservation was, is this going to be misconstrued as being, we're somehow concerned about, or we don't want to be attached to our opinions.
Right. No, I mean, in thinking about it right now, I'm kind of with you, Jim. Like, the draw of the community of the commission survey was more that we each get to take time with it and be able to write down our thoughts, think about it for a while, and then submit it. And then that always begets a better conversation. And so as much as there can be good intention coming into these meetings, being like every agenda item I've thought of, and here I am ready to speak of it, we know it doesn't always happen. But with something like this, where it's only happening every 2 years, it's going to be a big deal. And we want to just bake into the process that time that individual commissioners can do. I'm not attached at all to the anonymity of it. And in fact, I think I might be supportive of it not being.
Yeah, I don't think it matters. I think initially I was thinking it might be easier to really think it through and write things down for us if it was anonymous. And I didn't necessarily think that our names were that important. But because it's not important, I think they can be there or not. So, yeah. So.
I just had a question about the jury process. I was not involved in that part for this last round. Do they receive guidelines for the jurying process?
So this last round, we did receive from staff juring criteria that corresponded to the questions that the artists received. So the juring rubric was based upon different attributes as far as like, now I'm just blanking out, talking about the specific sites, talking about the personality of each district, talking about does it speak to the history of each district, how does it engage the community, how will
I think
it enliven the space, these sorts of questions. And then it was, we got a form that was, we were asked to weight it by number. The actual conversation online with the jury, just we each talked through each piece and we talked about each of those things. And then people were basically like, this is the one I think we should put forward, or these are the two that I think we should put forward. And then we went back and forth. So it never got actually numbered in that way.
Are you proposing revising the rubric for the jurying as part of this process?
Yeah, I think the mission statement is the biggest thing. So
okay.
we looked at all these different ones, and even it's like, okay, I went on ChatGPT and was like, give me the best rubric for a public art program in a city of this size, yada, yada, yada. And it spit out all of these weighted options, and when it comes down to it, there's still a certain amount of data and numbering, because we'll say, it's like there's always this kind of subjective objective thing. And we were really trying, again, to get away, like, how do we get it toward meaning and purpose rather than like and dislike? And with that, as long as site appropriate is part of it, then we felt that, yeah, you can break that mission statement down into those 3 clauses and use those for a more meaningful discussion, rather than how do you think the community will talk about this,
Right.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that. I think if you think about the rubric, no matter what you choose, if you follow that rubric, that's essentially what you're going to get. So if the rubric question is, how much does this beautify the surroundings, then you're going to get artwork that beautifies. And so before we choose a rubric like that, I thought it was important that we actually go to the public and we actually ask, what role should it play? Do you want it to beautify? And so that's really what this mission statement is. That's why we have it, so that they told us what they want, and that's what we use as the rubric. And then to kind of the point of like and dislike, I've been thinking about this a lot, but I think, if you think of like pop art and someone that loves pop art, and then you think of like an impressionist work of art, and someone, likes impressionist work of art, and you put those two up and you say, which one do you like better? There's going to be a lot of people that love an impressionist work of art and they think pop art is very horribly ugly, and they will stand up and they can tell you all the reasons why it's ugly, vice versa, right? And that doesn't really get you anywhere. So that's kind of what I mean by likes and dislikes. That's an endless conversation, and both are good. Neither is better. So having this mission statement and getting the input from the community and what we want, and using that as a rubric, and having that be sort of our North Star as in terms of choosing the artwork moving forward, I think was really the key to this whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that's well put, and I also think that that idea that the public has created the rubric speaks to this larger idea too. We were really curious, like, do we want to try to attract artists from all over the world, say, or all over the nation, and get these like amazing artists that everybody knows? I don't even know if we, it's just riffing, but like La Jolla has incredible artists come who are very well known and totally, different program. But what we found when we spoke to people is that really like local stories, local artists, local, and sometimes it will be a mix. It's open, but this opportunity to really understand what do we want Encinitas public art programs to be about, at least from the majority of the people who we spoke to. And again, it doesn't have to be an all in or nothing as far as elevating from the, you know, the echelons of the art world. But I think what we found more and more were people were like, yeah, we want something that speaks to Encinitas. And then it isn't about, yeah, I will stop it there. So moving forward, I guess the next thing is, do you think that this is ready for us to present it to council? I feel there are a few hiccups, little changes. And yeah, you know, this is what we've done. This is probably what we are going to do with little changes. And then we would present it to council, or, you know, they can watch this also and, you know, I mean, it would go forward. So do you think it's time to do that?
Yeah, so do we, I mean, just to clarify the process, it's just hard to synthesize it all, I guess, on the spot. Do we need to vote on moving this forward tonight?
Nope, we don't.
I think for myself, I might need more time just to like kind of look at it again, like just to see if there was anything. Nothing really comes up that, you know, that like any, oh, you really missed something. I mean, I think it's a really thorough proposal. I think I just might need a little bit more time to be ready to vote on it or make any other recommendations.
Okay. I did say nope, but at the same time, and that's good. I know that the push for time has kind of gone back and forth for being like, oh shoot, we really need to get this into place so that it can roll and go to council. Council's list with a new council is very extensive. They seem to be pulling more items to talk to during each meeting than past council. And so to get things on council's agenda when we know it will be looked at, I don't know, but I'm guessing it is like, if we wait till, we're in February now, if we wait till March, April, May, do you think that it would get there?
It is several months out.
Okay.
So the recommendation from staff would be not to wait too much longer.
Right. So yeah, so kind of our hope tonight was to like present it, see what you felt. If everyone was gung-ho and was like, yeah, this is good enough, make a few changes, then send it to staff to get it on, that would be awesome. But at the same time, if we're not ready, and also there's 2 commissioners absent, we do have quorum, so we can. There's that. Again, there's just this, you know, the timeline, even though it's every 2 years, the timeline, once you dial time into each stage, hoping that we had dialed out our timing to back it out for saying, okay, if council approves now, then staff has plenty of time to implement all of this at each stage and get it ready so that there is, you know, the next round.
So just to clarify, like, if we voted on this tonight, would then this slide presentation just go to the city council as the proposal? And then from there, if city council said, yes, this, you know, we're ready to move forward, would then the ad hoc work with staff to like make the revisions to the process? Is that sort of how it would work?
I think this would be our recommendation to council that this is how we think the program should work, and then council would give direction.
Okay.
Yes, and sort of. When you take a recommendation to council, you are going to want to have as many of the question marks resolved. So they're asking for the commission's recommendation on all of these things. Several of you have asked some questions tonight. The council might have some of those same questions. They might have different ones that they're not necessarily, they may or may not want to make what that decision is. They may want you to. So if any of you have questions, you might want to think through those and say, would we like to present what the answers could be versus asking someone else, maybe who's not got the level of experience with art and artists and the process, making a decision for you.
And clarify if this is wrong, but because we've presented all of this and we've discussed it tonight and it is on public record, if there's just a small change on a question that has been brought up tonight, could they send that to me directly without Brown Act stuff?
I'm going to have to say no because it's not information only. So that's one way. You send information out. We're having a meeting. This is happening. You're not expecting anything in return. So a question by definition is not one-way communication.
Not to send me a question, but to send, this is my opinion on, it's not really public information at that point.
That's different than.
I'm gonna say, because there have been questions and it's been good to run through, I don't think that this like exact presentation is what we would do, what we would present to council. And so, yeah, let's not make any vote, but please do come prepped with well thought out and maybe prepped thoughts, like write them down for yourself, have them ready to roll. And yeah, well.
One item in particular that is going from memory here, you reference it was simplified, making a modification to the artist call. If that was something that you wanted to give an example of, like, this is what that would look like, that would answer any questions, perhaps, to someone who doesn't really know what that is, maybe isn't as familiar as all of us are. So give that as an illustration. So in some of these places where you are explaining a thing that you'd like to do, you would want to make sure that it was demonstrated in a way that anyone who didn't have that depth and breadth of knowledge that we all do, because we're so close to it, that it would be really easy for them to understand what you meant.
I think
Even going to the rubric, sorry to interrupt, even going to the rubric question, which based on everything that I understand made complete sense in terms of, well, this is the mission, so here's how the rubric would inform that. But to someone who's maybe not as familiar, what would that look like? Could you give a super clear example?
That's what I was going to actually say was my interpretation of what City Council requested was a revised rubric. And so that there can be a comparison there. And so maybe it's just a matter of taking the concepts and the proposal outline and just creating, like she's saying, an example. I do think that would help council make that decision quicker.
Great. I think those are all really good inputs and feedback. Thank you for that. Okay, any last comments? We'll move on. I do want to make a motion to extend the meeting because I know we still have a lot to talk about. Maybe we won't need it, but by 30 minutes. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so we will.
Real quick, let the record show the motion passes with all commissioners voting yes to extend the meeting to 7:30. Okay.
Thank you, Jamie. Sorry. All right, so we'll move on to this update for ideas for an artist in residency program at Pacific View Art Center, the potential of one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so these are some ideas. I'm on the ad hoc for the potential of an artist in residency program. So part of engaging in this is understanding what the restrictions were of Pacific View. And the major one is that there's really no way to provide an artist with any studio space there. But I didn't think that was a problem. And so while going through this, I spoke with a lot of artists. I talked to other programs that have artists in residencies. I've been with Lux and ICA for a long time. We have had 2 different artist in residency programs, so I have a lot of experience with that. And I came up with some ideas of how I think that an artist in residency program at Pacific View could work and could benefit both, Pacific View, the community, and local artists. I kind of wrote the mission and the vision of Pacific View and some of the goals, but I'm assuming you guys had a chance to read through this, but some of the benefits for Pacific View and for the community are similar. The idea of having an access to a working artist to generate public interest. And then for the artist, I think most of the benefits would come from exposure. So I'll kind of jump to the part that talks about the proposed implementation. And again, these are just my ideas that I wanted to present to you guys and talk about. This is not in the form that is ready to go to council at all yet at this point. So the first part would be a selection process. I would suggest that the artist in residence would be chosen by a committee formed by members of the ad hoc and the public. The residency, I would suggest, would be between 6 months and 12 months. You can cross this part out, during which time, that's from a previous version, the artist would not have access to a designated classroom. Point 3, stipend and compensation. Obviously, we would still have to find funding for that, but part of the reason for doing this is to kind of put together a program, and once you have a program, then you can go out and kind of look for funding. But the idea is that they would receive a modest stipend for being an artist in residence, and then they would get compensation for talks and workshops and other public engagements. One idea of how they can engage with the community is that they would have what I call office hours. So they could be available, and people could drop in and ask questions. They can be engaged or looped into Pacific View by potentially having some of the instructors there bring them into their class, and so talk to them, the different people that are taking the classes, and then be there and have office hours so people can come in and ask them questions. Another idea is to host workshops. So they can host workshops for both adults and kids. And the difference between these workshops that they would be hosting and workshops that currently take place at Pacific View is that I would say that the workshops that are currently taught at Pacific View are taught by teaching artists that are teaching a skill to a general skill to the people that want to learn. So they might be teaching printmaking or drawing or embroidery, whereas an artist in residence a workshop would really be, the first part would be explaining their process, explaining how they got to their body of work, how they got to their vision, what their vision is about, what their actual process of making the art is, and then walking participants through that process. So the people would be making something that looked like what the artist makes. Does that make sense? Yeah, so a little bit of a different feel. And we've done similar things like that at Lux, and it's always been a big hit. Some things that we could offer the artists in residence, I think that they would benefit most from publicity. So potentially an exhibition. Again, we would have to think out about where this could be. Potentially at Pacific View, that would have to be a pop-up because it wouldn't be able to stay there for a long time. And then, use whatever we can to kind of give them the publicity and marketing. Let's see. Did I skip over anything? And then, possibly also we can give them the idea of talking at art night or looping them into some of the programs that we already have. So I just kind of flew over that, but did you guys have any questions?
I have a few questions.
Okay.
One is, speaking of studio space, are you thinking mostly of a visual artist in residency, or there's so many creative, like there could be a musician who's the artist in residence, or like I would imagine that the program would be broad because the center is broad, or?
Oh, that's a good question. I was thinking of a visual artist, but yeah, I think it could be open to everything, of course. Yeah.
And then another question is, like, roughly, do you have an idea of how much a program like this would cost?
I mean, it would really depend on how many of these kind of ideas for community engagement we use, and how much publicity we could actually provide the artists. So no, I think, we would want to compensate them for any of the workshops. I think it would be great to provide these workshops for free. So then getting funding for them would be one way to do it. Yeah, I mean, again, these are ideas. I think once we kind of move through what would make the most sense, then we can figure out how much funding we would need, and then we could go look for it.
And then final question, I know when I started looking into an artist in residency program and talked to someone in the city, there was a stipulation that any artist in residency cannot, because it's an education center, it cannot be used to make their own art that would then be sold, or that they would be compensated for in the future ever selling. So that an artist could be there, participate in the community, but not be making their own work even during off hours within the facility. Is that still, is that something you have clarification on?
Well, initially we were considering offering studio space at Pacific View during the off hours, and that would have been an issue. But members of the public aren't allowed to be in Pacific View without staff there, so it isn't an option anyway to offer studio space in Pacific View during off hours. So they will not be creating anything there. And to be honest, I think for the artists or the type of artists or the category of artists that we're interested in attracting, they're already making art. They already have a body of art. So they already have a location to create their art. And to kind of move that into Pacific View for certain off hours and then move it back, I don't think that would actually be a benefit for them. So I don't think that's a hindrance to this. I don't think it's an issue.
I mean, it sounds great. There's such an opportunity here, and it's such a unique, again, I really like how you presented the fact that using the limitations as part of what actually sells the program, right? Like why you would want to do this. Now I need that chocolate. But yeah, I think it's exciting, and questions.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool idea. I remember how much buzz there was at Lux around those resident artists. It was a nice kind of feature there. And Katie was asking about the cost, but I guess I'm never quite clear on where funding, like, for something like this would come from, like to pay a stipend. Is that what the options would be? I mean, is it realistic that there would be money available for this?
Well, I think the hope would be that we would be able to find some sort of grant funding.
Okay.
Potentially, yeah, I think that would be the hope. Yeah. And I mean, I'm thinking the stipend itself would be relatively modest, and I think what the grant funding would go towards is these workshops and programs. So it is something that the community is getting from the artists. Potentially these could, we could charge for them as well. That's another option, but yeah.
One question is just about, would it need to be a local artist in residence? Was that part of the vision?
Well, I think that's an interesting question. And I think, the idea of local, I think is, I don't think I would want to restrict an artist to, a certain boundary. I think what the community likes is sort of, is more what we saw when we went around asking. They wanted stories about this area, this region. So I think that would be the artist that would ultimately be most relevant. There's also no place to live included in this. So you would have to be relatively local in order to take advantage of what we're offering. So I think to some extent it would be relatively local.
Okay, thank you.
And I think keeping the general idea too of like coming up with a structure of a program and then allowing it to blossom. So if it were to move forward, if funding were to be got, then like a mission for the program, the details of the program, all of those things could be worked out. And, local could be a theme of the program. It doesn't necessarily mean that someone can't come from who doesn't live here, who can self-fund their stay and talk about what local means, or, there's lots of ways to imagine that. While we are on this, if there aren't any more questions about the specific update, are there? Actually, I'll just wait on that. Because I think after this, we will move on to doing our updates and coming up with our outcomes. So, maybe we'll just start from number one. And before we do that, does everyone want a 7th inning stretch? Do you want to stand up? Do you want to move around at all? Not like a pause, but just, is everyone good? Good. All right. I'm going to pop my. So last meeting, and as a reminder, I think each ad hoc has prepped a statement of the stated outcomes of each line item of our work plan. How I'd like to do this is for each ad hoc, one person to read aloud that statement, and then if anyone wants to add it to it or have questions, if the language is pretty good, then we can all agree on it verbally. And once that's done, so we'll move through the entire work plan that way. Once that's done, you can email, if we do agree to it, you would email me that language. I will write it up and I will send a document to Colette with all of those. And can always we can approve it, like pending approval of X, Y, and Z line or word or whatever it is. Okay, so we'll start with number 1. And Jim?
So I just had, in terms of the outcome description, regularly served as liaison to the Cultural Tourism Committee, sharing information on the Arts Commission's work and receiving updates from the numerous other entities involved with the committee and with cultural tourism in Encinitas. I didn't have to run that by anybody except me because I was solo on this, but happy to adjust.
Did everyone agree?
Yeah. A lot of conflict.
You're so lucky. It's so easy.
So just a quick point of clarification. In the full statement, you would want to identify which commissioner was designated or appointed, rather, and who the alternate was, just so that ends up being part of that
Perfect.
outcome.
Thank you.
Great. So I think we'll all agree with that statement pending the addition of commissioner names. And if you don't have the commissioner names written into any of the updates, then we can always add those each one. You don't have to read them into your statement going forward. Great. Number 2, the research available funding opportunities. That was all of us. Did anyone write one up? Or I think for all, we might just chat about it. I'd say there was research done on grants. I know that, Robin, you sent a few grants and spoke to staff about them. Sorry. So I think we can say we researched funding opportunities to support city arts and programs and discussed with the city staff.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Okay.
It's a lot. I mean, there's no way we're going to be able to name that's a big umbrella. So I think we can't kind of be super specific in there anyway. So.
And I think there were no huge wins in that work this year. I think that'll be a really big one in this coming work plan. And I think it's best to just go through outcomes and then we'll go back around and talk about the work plan. Number 3 for Pacific View. The promotion of city arts programs and events. We came up with some plans, introduced the ideas to staff, and but nothing really moved forward besides just some individual social media. So I'm going to write that up. I believe NEAT was going to give that update, and I don't have that with me that we did approve. For Art Night?
Do you want me to? Yeah, I wasn't sure if I came up with a separate one for Art Night, but I didn't know if we needed one consolidated.
We can
kind of
probably just
outcome.
do one that,
Okay.
yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I just had, participated in getting the word out on Art Night happenings via social media and other outlets. That was for the promotion piece of Art Night. So it's
Okay.
pretty general.
I think that's essentially what NEAT had to, so you can send me that and then I'll just consolidate that for that specific one. Is that?
You would definitely want to put it under the same line of line 3, but specify this, because it is specified here, this is for Pacific View, this is for Art Night. If it's all the same, then you could say this all happened for both of these things. If there's any
Okay.
differences, you would just want to identify that.
Okay.
But definitely address
Bullet
each one.
point. All right, for number 4, Carla, do you have that one to read? Or Jim, whichever.
Yeah, so I have during 2024, the guest speaker ad hoc, which was Chair Fox and Baron Romer, that we launched the speaker series with the appearance of Christiane Kerner of New Village Arts Theater and began building a list of and contacting additional strong candidates for the series.
Okay, thank you. Number 5, under arts education. This again had one for the artist in residency program and one for the community engagement program. Carla, do you want to read both of those since you don't?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, let's see. I'll do artist in residency first. So the commissioner, which was me, researched and assessed the visibility of establishing an artist in residence program that aligns with the restrictions of Pacific View Arts Center. Completed action items include gathering information on the specific limitations of the space, evaluating how these constraints might impact potential program designs, reviewed various artist residency models, engaged in discussions with both local and non-local artists, gained insight in what would be most beneficial to artists, and then based on the above findings, compiled a recommendation or some ideas that support local artists, enhance community engagement, and aligns with the mission and goals of Pacific View, and shared these recommendations to the commission. And then community engagement, we, the commissioners, which was Commissioner Morakovitz, myself, and Fox, we researched community engagement programs implemented by other school districts, municipalities, and nonprofits, and analyzed their structure and benefits. We explored strategies for maximizing public benefit and enhancing the use of Pacific View Arts Center. We identified a few key opportunities to strengthen the community engagement, and we shared the recommendations as a proposal, which I believe was presented to City Council for consideration. Is that right?
I'm not sure that the letter has been sent yet because of scheduling.
All of the letters have been sent.
Okay. So
Okay.
yes, that's right. Okay, great. Does anyone have any comments on that? Okay. Awesome, thank you. Okay, and then moving on to number 6.
I can do this one. So this ad hoc included myself, Campbell, and Kadakia. The ad hoc did not meet to review teaching artist program submissions because none were presented by city staff. The commissioners did not make any recommendations on any program submissions.
Great. And I think we can add something to that, and just so that I'm realizing, because I believe that all commissioners have shared about the teaching opportunities with artists. So we probably want to amend that a little bit because we have been talking to people and letting people know and sending that application.
Yeah, I was going to add that we did share it on social media, and I personally reached out to 2 who did submit proposals, but because those artists were not contacted, I wasn't sure if that was, if they didn't end up getting hired.
So I think so. Yeah, I think we can just say the commission, commissioners Campbell, Fader, Kadakia, and other, I'm assuming just on the commission,
Okay, so there was some
shared the proposal process with potential teaching artists. Period.
Okay.
Yeah, that works. We all shared.
All right. So with public art, moving on to number 7. And for the Pacific View Arts Center, this is for any city-funded as subject to coming our way when appropriate, city-funded projects for this one. First one is Pacific View. You wanna
Yeah,
do
you
that one
want me
too?
to go? Okay, so the ad hoc, again, Campbell, myself, and Fox. The ad hoc did not meet to review city and privately funded public art projects at Pacific View Arts Center. Because there were no projects presented by city staff, the commissioners did not make recommendations on any project submissions.
Thank you. Pretty straightforward. And Carla, did you want to read the sculpture?
Sure. Commissioners reviewed and provided input on artwork donations to ensure their alignment with the city's public art goals. They evaluated 2 proposed donations, a sculpture and a mural, considering all aspects, including placement, artistic quality, community impact. Through discussions, site visits, studio visits, and careful assessment, commissioners provided recommendations to city staff and city council for further considerations.
That sounds great. I believe that is for the artwork donations
Yeah.
at the bottom. And then for the sculpture loan program.
Oh, gotcha. Sorry.
No, that's good. I'm just
Okay.
doing that one first.
Yeah, sculpture loan program. Commissioners undertook a comprehensive effort to revamp the city's sculpture loan program. Completed action items include researched similar programs in other cities, consulted with industry experts such as insight consultants and survey designers to gather professional guidance, conducted public intercepts, interviews, and focus groups to understand community preferences, based on above findings, identified key issues and developed actionable suggestions to enhance the program's effectiveness and public engagement, and then shared recommendations via a PowerPoint presentation to city staff, the public, and the commission at this meeting.
Thank you.
You might want to include some reference as to when that will go to city council, because that item did come at their direction.
Okay.
Generally mention when you anticipate it going.
Great. And then for the Olympus Park,
Yeah, so I would just say no additional outside funding was identified during 2024 for public art at Olympus Park, but the ad hoc, Commissioner Hebert, me, solo, it continues to put out feelers for funding.
thank you. So we will scroll down to the performing arts. This is 8 and 9, and Commissioner Morakovitz, who's not present, would give that update. So I'll reach out. This is one of those process things, Colette. Can Jennifer send me that write-up, even though it hasn't come to the whole commission this month?
As long as it's just being submitted for inclusion in a document.
Okay, great.
That will then get attached for the public to see as part of the next agenda.
Okay. And then for number 9, Jim, did you have that one?
Yeah,
Okay.
I had some wording that is sent to Jennifer, and we just tweaked it a little bit, but I can throw that at you. So under the key guidance of Vice Chair Morakovitz, the Encinitas Youth Piano Concerto Competition was successfully launched in 2024 in partnership with the City of Encinitas and the North Coast Symphony. Commission Chair Morakovitz led the ad hoc's efforts as originator, key planner, and chief commission liaison for the competition, while Commissioner and ad hoc member Hebert assisted with media outreach. The competition's second edition is now in progress for 2025. I don't know if that's a little long, but
That's good.
it covers it all.
It's a lot of work. Great. And number 10, assist city staff with recommendations, plannings for art night, and that was for all of us. My suggestion would be to say that commissioners volunteered at all 4 art nights of 2024 and the beginnings of 2025. And that's pretty much it, because we didn't do much more this year.
There no planning. Certainly the volunteering is also very much appreciated.
I'd say that is the outcome. So I don't think we have to highlight what was not done, but just highlight what was. For number 11, Campbell or?
I have that.
Yeah, okay, great.
Or did you want to do it?
No, I didn't bring my notes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I reviewed what we came up with, and it was great.
Okay, so, so Commissioners Campbell, Fox, Romer. Commissioners participated in a panel to review and select artists and group exhibitions for display in municipal buildings throughout 2025.
Great. And then for number 12, the ad hoc assisting city staff and the Encinitas Student Advisory Panel for art exhibitions.
Ad hoc members Campbell and Morakovitz attended a meeting with Lou to kick off this program, and the follow-up of that will be held on Thursday with an initial meeting to introduce the students participating. Is that?
So you're going to want to maybe make it a little less date specific in terms of met with city staff and initiated the program with plans to continue.
Okay.
Just so, because it's sort of this larger, you got it started and you're continuing to meet and
Okay.
push the program forward.
I'll email you that.
Great. And then number 13, the bylaws, the commissioners, Chair Fox, Kadakia, and Vice Chair Morakowitz met with staff and began a draft of bylaws. And that may be updated by the time I get you because we have a meeting this week.
And so whatever the outcome is, as of the time you submit it, you'll just have it be that, because it may or may not be completely resolved by the time we need to submit outcomes from this year, and that's okay. You'll just say we anticipate the project being concluded if you wanted to, if it's not done
Yeah,
yet.
no, but there might be more information to add after Thursday's meeting. So
Exactly.
yeah. Okay, great. So that's outcomes. Thank you to everyone for having taken the time and written those, and we got through that pretty well. And also, sorry, I'm in like mode of just meeting running, and I'm running low today. But I just want to step back for a second. Like, I didn't even frame this conversation, which is what I meant to do. Is that was the work that we did this year, and it was considerable actually. I've been on this commission in past years where it was still full commitment, but not so many specific outcomes. So I just want to applaud all of us in that efforts. Even even knowing that there were some that felt like less effort went to, and that's okay. That's just part of it. At the same time, as we now transition to a discussion about our work plan for this year and 2026, that idea of really thinking about what is it that we want to work on, what is it that we can give attention to, and so you can kind of imagine looking back at this meeting next year and being like, wow, every update was just, or 75% of the updates, I think would be a big win in that way. So, yeah, sorry, I was thinking about, I didn't want to combine those two conversations just to keep it clear. So now we will just go right back up to number 1, please. So I think for this coming year, again, new council, new year, staff has been informed that funding will remain the same, but so far, but certainly no new funding will likely come our way, to the department's way. And so with that, I do really want funding to be a part, meaning I think that funding is a big part of any program that we work on. And I do think that there will also be new and exciting avenues for accessing that funding, and more to come on that next meeting. So as we talk about it moving forward, that is a key goal, and also the goal as far as like reaching the community and having this back and forth between community and the commission. So we talked about it in our January meeting. How do we get more people to come here? How do we gather more public input about what the public wants, thinks, all those things. So those can kind of be themes of our work. And then we just have to dial in so that there's places in the work plan where anything that might come up can still find a home throughout the year, that if staff brings it to us or... So anyway, number 1, Cultural Tourism Committee, I think we should keep that. Does anyone think we shouldn't?
That is an item that will have to remain.
Okay, yeah. So there you go. There is an opportunity to reassign. In years past, there has been a liaison to the EFA, the Encinitas Friends of the Arts. So that is an opportunity to have one commissioner assigned to that, who would then be in contact with the EFA.
That, I believe, is going to need to be included in the new MOU to be approved prior to being something that could be part of your work plan. At the time that was, it was part of the EFA MOU. It is not currently.
It's not currently.
It is not.
Okay. That I must have written.
So if that is something that the commission is interested in, there are just additional steps to take.
Okay. Is that something that we are interested in?
I mean, we can speak with them and reach out to them on our own without it being something that's necessarily part of our plan. Is that right? What would the advantage of it being part of our work plan be? Just that we're reporting to the entire commission what they're up to?
Yeah, it formalizes it, gets it in front of city council, and foments that relationship as opposed to a coffee relationship to a EFA. We respect the work that you do, and we want to have an ongoing bridge there.
I think, putting it on a work plan is a great idea. I don't know if we're going to be able to fill everything on the work plan, so I wouldn't want to put it on if we don't have a commissioner that's able to take that on.
I agree.
I'm not sure how we go about determining that, but in and of itself, it sounds like a worthy cause.
Well, is there anyone here who obviously this is not about assigning anyone, or just getting a feel. Is anyone interested in taking that role on if it were on? No. Okay. There are other ways of doing it. We can invite them to give an update specifically to the commission. Same thing with San Diego, North County. Arts Network is another one. I'm just trying to think of understanding what's going on in the community at large.
Is there a way to have something so that if we do have updates, each of us, if we're reaching out to Friends of the Arts or any of these, that we can update the commission? I don't know, maybe at the end, the commissioner reports, for example, is that something that we could bring it in a less formalized way?
And also, I had the idea, again, I don't know if it needs to be an item or not, but we could have a commission, I don't know what the right wording is for it, but say a commissioner networking item and it's about understanding, making a list of all of the people who we could reach out to, artists, organizations, businesses, and just, establishing and growing those relationships. And I don't think that's a bad idea to have on. And then you could have an ad hoc that is simply tasked with coming up with that list, and then each month bringing names to the commission and saying, hey, does anyone want to reach out to X, Y, and Z? And then, okay, great, report back. So that could be a way of formalizing it. And also, I do feel like we all kind of do that. It's written into our role, but it's not ever captured in that sense.
I think I like that direction because it's larger than, and I don't think we could have a item for each of those different organizations. So to have one that kind of encompasses all kinds of networking sounds like it would make a little bit more sense.
Okay, so is that something that we would want to add?
I'd be for it.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. As long as we're specific about what we would, or we're clear that what we want the outcome of that to be, because it could be a little more scattered if it's,
That's a very good point, to be clear about the outcome. The way I understand it, the outcome would be to stay kind of on top of what other arts organizations in our area are doing. Is that right, Katie?
Yeah, I think the outcome would be partly to remain, both, it's a give and take there, right? So we're constantly informing people what the commission's work is, what the department's initiatives are all about, and where they are at with that. And then just growing the relationships and understanding that the commission is a place where people can bring ideas and concerns, and that is a way also to get it to council instead of just going to city council meetings. So it would also, there's lots of ways to partner. And then the other aspect is, because funding is such a big deal this year, the more people we're talking to, the excitement we can stir on certain initiatives, you never know what comes of those conversations. So I'd say the outcome is just to learn more, to share more, and to increase our visibility and opportunity for funding. That's not the right wording, but.
I don't know if it's the right time to bring this up. It's kind of more a point or a question about kind of the overall way that the work plan is laid out. But Chair Fox, you were suggesting we look at other commissions' work plans. I was looking at actually I have it up here, the Environmental Commission's work plan. And one thing that they have that is not on ours is a category, a column called status tracking, which I just thought of because I feel as though when we're talking about a work plan item like this, where it involves multiple organizations we might be talking to, that a way of keeping track throughout the year of how we're doing on that might be a good thing. And I don't know if we're locked into the format we're using right now in any way, but I don't know. I kind of like the fact that they have this column where you can look at it and see, well, here's what we've done so far. I don't know if that's something that.
That is something that you as a commission or representatives from ad hocs, the chairs, can certainly do that kind of upkeep.
Okay.
And in your reporting, if you want that to be part of an ongoing document that is attached, but that kind of continual updating in the work plan for us is not something that we're currently doing. So precedent-wise, that's not what we're doing within our department.
Okay, but we have the flexibility to do that if we want
That's part
to?
of what you're doing anyway when you come and
Yeah.
you bring reporting. So if you'd like to submit that as something that then becomes
Right.
an attachment to it, and then as you updated it, like the new information is with
Right.
each agenda, absolutely, you could do that.
Okay, but it sounds like, I think an attachment is different from actually having it embedded in the work plan document.
Essentially, you're working on your outcomes throughout the year,
Right,
and you're building your document as you go.
yeah. And we can do it the way that I was referring to, that the Environmental Commission does it, where it's right there on the document.
You can certainly have a copy. The work plan as approved by council will be always attached.
Okay.
And then any kind of status reporting, outcome reporting that you wanted to do as an additional attachment could
Okay.
be submitted as well.
Okay,
And just to clarify, so there's two things that the Environmental Commission does on their work plan that I think you mentioned both. One is this idea of an ongoing update and that being filled in the outcome box. And then another is this kind of key that has a number key that has the subject areas that each line item
Right.
addresses. So
Yeah.
were you referring to that or only to the outcomes?
No, I was really, yeah, they do list these focus areas, but I wasn't focusing, so to speak, as much on that as on the status tracking. But yeah, I mean, yeah. But
Maybe-
yeah, I didn't mean to derail from talking
No,
about these
no.
specific items.
No,
That was
it's
more
all-
of an
it's- again, this
overarching
is-
idea.
This is a big conversation, and one goal is to get it pretty, it would be so great if we could vote on this next month for various reasons. And right now it feels like, oh, well, how do we get from here to there? So we have almost an hour if we want to use up, and I know there's staff reporting also. So say we have however much, 30 minutes. One way of going about this conversation is just to run through and say, what do we want to keep? What do we want off? What do we want to add? and there's some things we may want to keep, but just change the wording of, and shift then what the focus or the goal is.
So one question, how much liberty do we have to do that? Is this?
We have full liberty. We can talk about anything we want during this conversation because anything is game. It may get to the point when then we say, well, that's not feasible. But as far as what we can actually speak and discuss, yeah.
But as far as what actually remains written on this work plan, does it then go back to City Council for approval if we suggest changes like removing a line item?
So this is our 24-25 work plan. This is the work plan that we've just went through the outcomes of, and that is what will go to council to be submitted next month once we consolidate and look at it and say. Then we are working also concurrently on what we want this and next year's work plan to be. So it's a 25/26 work plan.
Right.
And it will look like this. Some things like the cultural tourism will stay. But then it's our work plan, so we can choose. And staff can make recommendations for what's on it, but it doesn't have to look exactly like this, no.
So maybe would it be useful to know what needs to stay?
Well, there are some items that are written in, for example, in the public art policy, the commission's role as it relates to different aspects is written into that. So in one way or another, whether it is a line item on your work plan or it's brought to you, it's a cumbersome way to not have something like that you know is going to be an ongoing item left in your work plan, not be in your work plan, because then it has to be brought back. Then there are other things that have been brought to you every year on a regular basis, such as being in the holiday parade. Yes, it only happens once a year, but it is something you could conceivably be working on throughout the year if you wanted to, rather than waiting until it gets brought as a separate item. So those are, I'm not sure if I answered your question, but you got to think about the things that the commission plays a regular role in, and those are the things that really ought to be part of your work plan because they are connected ways that the commission works with staff, with council, with the city. And then there are other items that don't necessarily have that where, and I think those are the ones Katie's talking about, tell me if I'm wrong, they're items that came up that were priorities either for a previous commission or this commission, and based on your experience in working with it. For example, the funding one, you've had some experience with that. Maybe you're going to look at how you would approach that differently, or is that something that's included at all? That one's not in any kind of policy related. So that's very different from the commission's role with public art selection and recommendations.
Okay, so number one is staying because it's part of the policy.
It's part of the practice
Or the
of
work.
how the Cultural Tourism Committee and that information coming back and just that connection between the commission and the committee.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
They're all good questions. So I think it will become clear as we go through, and then we can just at least start in there. Okay, so for number 2, the research available funding opportunities, I think as is, it shouldn't stay. Again, and let me be clear, I think funding is a huge part of our work next year, which is very different than what I've thought in past years. One way to word it would be to assist and advise with any potential outside funding opportunities that align with the commission, the arts and culture staff, or city council goals. And that's a line item. That means that any initiative that comes our way, that staff wants to bring, that we want to bring, that council assigns, has a place that can be explored. Yeah.
Does that mean that we would assign like an ad hoc to that particular revision of number 2?
So the assigning of ad hocs comes after City Council has approved the work plan, but and that's a whole other conversation. So I would say that we would leave that one probably as an all, and then if one particular project came our way or something came our way, then at that time we could assign an ad hoc to that project. And that way, then if another project comes in, it can be a different group of people working on it. So it doesn't have to be the single ad hoc that always does the funding for any initiative that comes our way or that we want to go ahead and work on as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the wording is good.
Okay.
To the point and kind of gets at the goal of shifting the emphasis on that item. So.
Okay. So great. So just as with the outcomes, I'm making notes and I can compile a document for these kind of wording so that we can get something on the agenda that we can look at and then move forward with hopefully in March with a vote. Okay, so 1 and 2 are done. That's awesome. Okay, for number 3 with the promotion of city arts programs. Again, this one, not that much honestly was done. For various reasons. And I do feel like promotion is just something that every ad hoc should be working on and not in this general, like, just work on it, but actually, like, during updates that can be a thing of, like, these are the avenues we use to promote this item. We could make it general, like, similar to the language I just used for number 2, but it doesn't feel as... I don't know. I mean, promotion is such a huge piece, and I feel like every item that we will have is going to have some piece about how do you communicate with the public and how, there's okay. I'm going to keep talking. There can be. I thought Parks and Recs has a line item that is a pop-up at city events. So they do a pop-up park, like a commission thing. And so that's something else that we can consider that's, again, based on promotion, and it's also based on gathering public input. So we could identify 1 or 2 or as many city events that we would want to have a presence at. And then the ad hoc would be responsible for planning and implementing even if it's as simple as enough as a table, which has information about what the department is doing, information, some maybe key questions about what we want to gather public input about. Like, this is something would be great. Like, you could have a QR code with 1 question. We're just trying to get stuff back that way. And maybe an art project or something, I don't know. But that would be a way of again, not necessarily saying, let's do it at Art Night or Art Night only, but we could do it at Cyclovia and reach a really different audience than usually comes to art-related events.
So the way it is right now, the way I understood this, is that there's an ad hoc that's promoting Pacific View, there's an ad hoc that's promoting Art Night. Is that right? So perhaps instead of having ad hocs for each thing to promote, we have ad hocs for each way of promoting. So if, like what you said, one vehicle to promote things would be at city events or with a table, maybe that's an ad hoc that just goes and tries to promote things that way. Maybe we have another ad hoc that tries to, I don't know what else, I don't know what other venue, or I don't know what other paths we can do to market. Is social media, is that an option? Could we have an ad hoc that maybe looked into that as an option? I don't know what else, what other paths we can have, but maybe have the ad hoc specific to the way the promotion and the outreach will happen rather than what actual part of the city's art program we're promoting. Does that make sense? Well, so instead of saying you're on an ad hoc to promote Art Night, we'll say you're on an ad hoc to go to these city events and, figure out not even necessarily go, but to figure out the booth and to organize who's going to be there. And then at that event, we'll promote everything like you said, we can promote any program that is relevant to us at that time.
Yeah, I think it's a fair amount of work. Like if people are interested in doing that, I think that item, like a pop-up thing, would be enough work rather than just be one of many
I see.
things.
So
How
that
do you
would be
guys
the
feel?
way, that would be that,
No, I just mean that as we go down under public art or public education, arts education program, like every item has a publicity component. Could have my feeling is not that much happened in this one. And so I'm trying to prune. I say but how do we not make the work plan bigger, but actually make it smaller? So Jennifer and I were reading through this and we were like, you know what, maybe number 3 goes, understanding that it is absolutely the commission's role to help publicize and network these events.
So if you removed number 3, but you added language about promotion to each of the other areas, is that kind of what you're suggesting? So like for public art, there would be words in there that would say the ad hoc will promote public art in a variety of ways.
Yeah, the wording of each one, again, when you look at other commissions' work plans, they're very succinct. They're just like titles almost, so that you know, okay, this is about sculpture loan program. This is about mural loan, whatever it is. And then I think as ad hocs, there could be an expectation about, what are you doing? What kind of funding are you working on for this? What kind of promotion are you working on this?
see.
What are those action items for the ad hoc for the month?
So that each line item has more impact because there'll just be more action items attached to each of those.
Yeah, and I don't know if they'd actually have to be written out.
Yeah, I think it would probably need to be explicit, just so that if someone joins the ad hoc, they would know I may be responsible for promotion and fundraising.
Well, again, let's keep in mind that we are a commission. We are not doers, even though there's a lot that you can do in researching and advising. We're not saying that we have to go out and get the funds or that we have to, but we can make recommendations to do so. And we can show up and volunteer at events, all of these sorts of things.
I just wanted to add that within your stated goals, if it is your goal to do those things, you would want to include it because this is going to council and you're saying, this is our goal, is to do this, 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 and this. So it's not advisable to have sort of underlying goals that aren't stated.
Okay.
I have a clarification question because so you brought up the pop-up. So I feel like organizing the pop-up would be that's considerable work. I feel like we would need an ad hoc to be on that. Once they did that, I feel like we could use that pop-up to promote all the things we want to promote. So it seems like to have that, added to all, like the music competition and art night, it seems like we wouldn't be working together. It seems like it would make more sense to have the ad hoc work on getting that set up and finding the table and staff, figuring out who's going to be there. And
I agree. I think we're talking past each other there.
Okay, then,
Yeah.
okay. So, all right. So you want to get rid of this and add,
This is just a general, like, we're going to do promotion. And I would rather see something very specific with goals, with like you can imagine, we're already imagining, okay, there has to be a table, there has to be, we need the event, and,
I see.
that we can do.
I see.
Rather than this ethereal, we did. There were discussions with staff. Is there a template for flyers? And it's like there's so much to do. It's easy for stuff not to get done. So the idea is let's take off something that's general and replace it with something that's specific.
Gotcha. Thank you for clarifying. I understood that we were going to add to every other kind of thing that we're doing.
I
that there's-
understand how my feeling is that every ad hoc should be thinking about funding and promotion. And so that can be part of their work. And whether that needs, I think it can be implied in places. That's what I meant with
Okay,
that one.
thank you.
Yeah, I'm in favor of dropping that. I think it's always been a little confusing to me, not confusing, but just it feels like unnecessarily not streamlined to have art night be a promotional item and then also be a separate work plan item where we support the city. And those are both important, but they seem as though they could be part of the same work plan item to me. So.
Yeah, I now that I understand what you meant, I think it would make a lot of sense to make that just one, so that there aren't the three different ad hocs, but just one ad hoc, and to really be more specific about ways that we can promote city.
Do you guys want to make number 3 a pop-up commission event?
I don't know if we have to get that specific necessarily. I mean, I haven't looked into it. I don't know if it's even possible or not. I think, would we be limiting? I mean, I think pop-up would be a big one, but pop-up and other ways of promotion would be my thought. What do you guys think?
When you say pop-up, do you mean tabling? Like tabling at community events?
Yeah, I mean, the Parks and Recs does a table. They have a tent. They have set up like a, beanbag toss, temporary, like a pop-up park. So it doesn't have to be elaborate. It can be as simple as 2 chairs and a sign with, we have flyers from staff and we have a question, or, or it can be elaborate to is, a small event within the city event. But we can, city events are something I think have been underutilized, both for the commission has underutilized them, and it's a great way for the Department for Arts and Cultures to tap a larger audience.
Quick question is that Parks and Recs, are all of those activities that you just mentioned staffed by commission members, or is it city employees that are doing the beanbag toss?
It's commission.
All, okay.
I believe so. I don't have the details, but I know that the commissioners do it, and they're responsible for planning and running them. But obviously, they get support from staff from saying, yes, you can have this space. The coordinating, like this space is open to the commission during these hours, during this event. We will provide you with maybe a table.
Something that would happen in a public park or one of the city spaces, we would definitely have to permit so that we knew it could happen there. And then in terms of providing tables, chairs, pop-up tents, those are all things that staff has. The city has, that the staff could coordinate getting for the commission to use.
So I might just suggest that, it could be commissioners doing a tabling specifically for arts and culture, but at pre-existing city events, like you were saying, like the dog park day, or like things like that, rather than us creating some type of event or like happening. Okay,
We can be creative about how you show up at these events.
got it. What the tabling includes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was using the word pop-up because we're popping up at an event, and sometimes you might want to have a table, and sometimes you might want to have something else. Okay, well, I can come up with language and write it up for next time. So we're basically going to say, number 3, arts advocacy, we're going to replace this current language with some sort of commission presence at city-run events. And my suggestion for this one will be to, make small our ambition. Maybe pick 1 or 2 events, and we can say and more, because maybe we'll be at 10 events. But I'd love for us to feel, like these are the things we've thought about them. Show up here, and then once you do one or 2, then they become easier. Okay, so Moving on to 4, the research and coordinate brief presentations and speakers. We had one speaker. We've spoken to other people who are interested, and it's been somewhat of a scheduling thing on the people I've talked to. And I know last meeting we all agreed that that would be an interesting idea. So do you think we should keep it?
Yeah, so just wanted to revisit kind of what we were talking about last month, and if I understood that correctly, the way I remember it is that we were talking about potentially expanding the speakers to just artists that we have in our community, and then potentially inviting other people to come to just listen to the first 10 minutes or so of our meetings. If they stay longer, they can, but just to get people in here from our community, to get exposure to local artists. So I think that's a great idea, and so I think we should leave this, but maybe we want to tweak the wording a little bit because we have here relevant to work plan goals. So maybe have it more relevant to community engagement, which is one of the themes that you mentioned for the commission for next year.
I might also suggest that you could put this as an optional item in each of the other ad hoc areas. So for instance, if you're working on something for arts education, you would already know who might be interested in speaking or who you might ask to speak in order to advocate for the program or create interest in an exhibition, etc. So maybe putting that line item in each area might lead to more, like more of that action, bringing in those speakers more often. Just a thought.
Yeah, I could see that working well, too. This is another one that we made a line item, like at any time, any of us can invite someone to speak. It's not, and so that's kind of an open thing. We were just formalizing it here. So I do agree it serves the sense of community engagement and getting artists to come in and talk about their work. But if we add that into the goal of each one, then that could well be on top of mind for people who are working on that ad hoc too. I would see that the only benefit of having it as its own line item and its own ad hoc is that then those people can work on the scheduling, because it's a little bit like a doodle, where it's like, okay, I have someone who wants to speak. Great. Do they want to speak one of these 3 months? Okay, great. That one can, actually, I just got an email. They are going to be on a family trip now. Can it, but it doesn't, it's not a hard one because we all meet once a month and anyone can bring it up at a meeting. Can there only be one presenter per meeting? There's no steadfast rule about it. I think it's advisable to only, because most presentations will run 10 minutes. I think you can have up to 2, but it's advised to be 1.
Okay.
If it's a really low agenda and we have nothing to talk about.
Right, it's part of your commission time, so it just depends what amount of work you've got to do. And because it is something, you go through your work plan, and whether you're talking about public art or you're talking about upcoming exhibitions or whatever that thing may be, it's a perfect opportunity for the members of that. Let's say you were to keep it as the presentation specified line item, someone from that could say, hey, is there anything that makes sense? Do you have ideas for a speaker for public art or for arts advocacy or something along those lines? You just kind of reframe how you think about it.
All right, so which way do we think is better?
I think we should leave it as a line item because I think the scheduling, it's not a lot of work, but just have somebody that schedules it, and maybe, I think everybody is should have it on top of their mind that they can obviously invite people, but to have an ad hoc that's going to specifically see where there are openings and reach out to fill them, I think will be helpful, and it'll ultimately make it go
Facilitate it
better.
happening.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's move on then. So for number 5, now we're under arts education. Carla, what's your feeling about the artist in residency?
I mean, there's still a lot of work to do on it, so I think it should stay.
Good. And I think this one, I think, there's still 2 more spots to add to that ad hoc, or, yeah. Any other thoughts for that? Okay. I think we have an opportunity here to prune this one down to just the artist in residency. The community engagement, we did a pretty robust recommendation in a letter to City Council, and so pending what they want to do with that recommendation about utilizing Pacific View in a partnership with the schools, rather than have that be and I'm open to feedback on this, rather already be a line item, maybe see if City Council wants us to further research that, or do you have any sense of that? Colette, have you gotten any feedback?
I have no sense of that.
Okay.
I would just throw in that another opportunity, if creating community engagement opportunities is a priority for the commission, that one of the places you have an opportunity to participate and affect change is in Art Night. It is a free community event. It is all about community engagement. That is what Art Night is. So in many ways, it's a lost opportunity if that's a priority of yours.
Okay, so how do you all feel about striking, just saying for number 5, research and advise city staff we can still do the feasibility because there are lots of unknowns there as far as funding and such on the future artist residency program that do not have a habitation requirement, period.
Sure.
Okay. All right, and then moving on to number 6. This is one I feel like is a placeholder in case there are duplicate applications for Pacific View, then we have the opportunity to help make a decision. And this is one of those things like support the city's arts education programs. We're all sharing this information, but I'm also sharing a lot of other information. So I'm not sure. I get a little confused here whether it's like, should this stay on there just to be in the case of, or in the case of there being duplicate applicants.
Yeah, so it seems like last year when a lot of hiring was done, this didn't happen at all. If it does happen and we don't have an ad hoc, can we form one quickly?
If there were to be, so let me just make a general statement. If, at the direction of council, if such a thing were to arise where the commission's advice and involvement were to be needed on something that was not in your work plan, it would be brought as a separate action item.
We don't need this in here, is what I'm.
That is up to you. This was in response to the commission's strong desire to play a role in Pacific View. And because so much of what happens is operational and is done by staff, this is that niche where it's advice, it's an advisory role. Should we end up in this place, here is the role, this is how the commission participates.
Yeah, it doesn't really make any sense to me to keep it on personally.
Yeah, I mean, since it wasn't implemented, and it sounds as though there is an opportunity to do it a different way if it does come up, that
Yeah,
we don't really
I
need
agree.
it. So.
Okay. So number 6 is off. Just to clarify, Colette, if something, you just said if something comes up, it can be brought onto our agenda as an action item.
Yes.
Okay.
So much like
I don't-
if you opt not to put, for example, if you opt not to put the holiday parade on your work plan,
Right.
it does come up as an action item. It could be suggested that it is, I mean, again,
Or a commissioner-initiated
Let's talk
item.
about the senior commission. They kind of threw down pretty hard last year and made quite the impressive splash. So if that were to be an arts commission priority, for example, to do something spectacular and you wanted more time to think about that and plan it and have it be part of your work plan, that's an option. Alternatively, it's going to show up on your work plan as an additional action item for you to make a decision about if and how you would want to participate.
Thank you. Okay, so
Can I just make one suggestion based on that? So maybe what we are trying to do here is just eliminate anything that isn't needed throughout the year. And
Not necessarily,
No?
but that's not what I was saying at all.
Or just to have more focus on the things that we know need our attention throughout the year that are a little bit more complex or a bigger project, so that maybe we have more impact by just focusing our efforts.
Right.
Is that kind of what you're meaning by the pruning of, okay.
Yep. Okay. So we're agreed upon 6. We'll move on to number 7 under public art. Could just scroll that up a little bit so we can see the whole item. Thank you. Okay, so for this one, right now it's divided into city-funded, privately funded, and artwork donations. I think, I'm just assuming we're going to keep public art on there. So artwork donations should stay on there again because it's a bucket as if something comes up, and that's just there. There's an ad hoc formed ready for it. Although we can, if a donation comes up, an ad hoc can be formed, and then if another donation can come up, another ad hoc can be formed. So this is one of those ones. As I'm talking through it, I'm a little confused. Like, why do we have to have artwork donations on there if it can be on there when something comes up?
This division was something that from a previous commission is how it was done, so that public art, which is a pretty big category, can be, especially looking at the previous years. So this was how the commission had designated it be broken up so that different ad hocs could be assigned and not have crossover in how that work was done. You can come up with an alternate way, but this was the way it was done before so that anyone looking at it didn't feel like you were biting into something bigger.
So my suggestion would be that we have public art support the city's, I'll read that in a moment, have bullet items for each initiative or project.
You don't always know what the projects are, and that's how this came to be, because these are the categories of projects.
But if a project comes up, then it would be put on our agenda as an action item, and then we could form an ad hoc for it, no?
Give me an example, I'm not following.
Artwork donation. Someone comes to staff and fills out the application. Then it gets put on our agenda, and we.
So you're just saying
form an ad hoc.
as each donation comes up, each individual one goes to a different group?
Not necessarily to a different group, but it can be formed when it happens. Like that ad hoc is not active until something happens.
Correct.
So why are there words on our work plan about
Because
it?
it's connected to the public art policy, and it addresses things like city projects, and there's a slightly different process for donations. So I'm thinking this is how those categories got got formed. This is one of those work plan items where the commission's involvement is directly tied to existing policy.
I think it's so important. Don't get me, I'm not trying to get this off. I'm just trying to understand. I keep hearing and kind of getting that if something's not on our work plan and it comes up, that it's something that staff wants our help with, it can be put on, you put it on our agenda as an action item, and then we can take it on and even form an ad hoc for it. So I'm just trying, and then I keep hearing, well, unless there's language, I'm just trying to understand. There's obviously a difference here. It's just not clicking for me.
Sure, and in this case, public art, the commission's role in connection to public art is outlined within the public art policy. So this is an item where there is a definite connection. This is an example of an item that really should remain on your work plan, because you can anticipate that within any fiscal year, there is either going to be a city-funded project and/or a donation proposal. We could look back, and I'm not sure we'd find a year where you had nothing.
No, I agree. If I'm trying to imagine, say we have sculpture loan program, a mural program, XYZ program, and art donations. What is missing? Then funding is going to be needed for all of those programs. We're going to be responsible for advising on funding for all of them, whether it be outside funding. If a city-funded project comes, everyone looks confused. Now I'm making this
Now
too
I'm
complicated.
confused.
So with city-funded projects, it's often a recommendation of some kind, whether it is proposals that have come in, making recommendations to council on what to accept, is basically the undercurrent of all of them. Some of them come with funding. Sculpture Loan Program has existing funding. Donations are often, there's some financial obligation that comes with it because the city needs to pay for installation and then ongoing maintenance, but it's being donated, so there is no cost to purchase it. But each of these things has happened on a regular basis. So public art and having the commissions, I'm not sure I'm understanding where the
I'm just
question
trying.
is.
Let's move. Let's keep
Can I
moving
just
on.
can I
Yeah.
just say something? So I was in the artwork donation ad hoc, so I can't speak to the others, but speaking to that one, I think it was very beneficial to have the same ad hoc for the donations, and moving forward, I would suggest that we continue to do that, because I think we learn from the previous donations, and then if that keeps getting mixed up, I think it would confuse things. So I would not want to have every donated artwork have a different ad hoc. I think it would be good to keep that consistent.
Right. I see that benefit too. I'm not trying to get it off at all. I'm just trying to city-funded Pacific View Art Center. This is it's just very wordy box that nothing happened last year at Pacific View Art Center under city-funded, and in that for the public art. All I'm saying is this would be my suggestion. Public art, sculpture loan program, a mural program, the donations, and other programs. I added there was an informational item only that I sent to you as far as asphalt arts. That's something that I think covers a lot of boxes. There's a lot of places in the city that could benefit, including a huge parking lot of Pacific View. So that's something that I think that might be beneficial to be added to our work plan, and it would fall under public art. I'm just trying to simplify.
Yeah, and along those lines, if I can just add, because I've been on this Olympus Park thing forever, and it's always felt like an orphan to me, because it's more about finding funding and then finding a work of art, I guess, or a piece of public art, as opposed to these other items are kind of more about, the process of onboarding art. So I just don't know that particular piece really belongs there.
So that is an item that is carried over from prior commissions. There was a commissioner who was very interested in that. There were originally public art elements that were in the plans for Olympus Park, and I don't have all the details as to why those were not. I suspect it's funding and how things happen, but members of the commission previously had that as an important item, and so it's just continued to carry over because
Yeah.
that's significant funding. If that particular one is no longer a priority to the commission, which is okay, it's not saying it's bad, but that's how it got there. So when
Right.
you look at it and say, gosh, how did that get there?
Right. No, and I believe there is art in place at that park, at the top of that park. So it's not art free. So I don't know if that was kind of a passion project of one individual.
Let me just hop in here for 1 sec. It is,
Yeah.
there's 8 minutes left in our meeting, or 9 minutes left, I can't. So I think we can all agree that Olympus, nothing has happened to it. There's much more exciting, much more relevant projects, and let's just take it off. Good?
I was just going to suggest that you just, to simplify this, number 7, to just have public art ad hoc and artwork donation ad hoc.
The thing is that the sculpture loan program just took so much work, and if there was only one ad hoc for, say, the sculpture loan program and a mural program and an asphalt art program, it would be a lot of work.
Although we don't have, I mean, at this point, we don't have a mural program, right?
No, but we're talking about putting one on.
So you would have the option to create one for each project. So as you note here, the sculpture loan program had its own. When El Portal is complete by the time this work plan came along, but it was a different ad hoc. So, and that's what I'm saying is that the whole thing isn't one group of 3 people who has to.
No, I'm not suggesting that. Not
exactly.
at all. Yeah.
So that is what happens. So as projects come up, you would be able to form different ad hocs.
So suggestion that we cross off Pacific View Art Center because nothing really came from that. We keep Sculpture Loan Program. We cross Olympus Park. We keep artwork donations. We add mural and we add asphalt. Sound good? Okay.
Sounds good. Let's put that on the draft, and then again, we're hoping to get there next month, but at least we'll have some time, and do take the time in the following month to think about those. Do you want to be on a mural program? Like, all of that seemed relevant considering the work and what's come to us in the past and what we've been hearing. Let me jump ahead to number 10. 8 and 9, wait, let's see, performing arts. I think Jennifer is interested in having both of those on. She's not here, so I'm not going to speak for her. We're just mostly talking about what's on and off. Art night, I say we leave art night on and revisit the language for that as far as how we can participate more and who is interested in participating, if so. And what else was I going to say? Oh, under performing arts. Performing arts is limited right now to the piano stuff. We have 2 literary focused commissioners, with Niiti as a poet and Jim, you were a playwright and a journalist, and I didn't know if there's anything now. Sorry that I've talked so much. Is there anything that anybody would like to add? Or get it on to at least to enough so that I can then try to write up a draft that they can be on the agenda for next month.
In terms of adding to the work plan, thank you for bringing that up. We did have an intention of bringing more kind of dramatic arts to Art Night, and I still think that's a good goal and could fall within, I think, our Art Night existing work plan item. I don't have anything specific really at front of mind in terms of a separate work plan item that would be along those same lines. But it's definitely worth keeping on the radar, I think, so.
Great. Anybody else have additions that they've thought about? No. Okay, so we kind of powered through that, but I feel like it got to a good enough place where we can kind of, I can draft it up. Yeah.
What about I know we brought this up, California Cultural District idea. Is that something that we can contribute to?
That was pending the application being accepted, right? And then that would come on as an action item for us to be involved?
It would seem that we would anticipate that if that were to happen, that city council would seek the commission's involvement. I don't have any direction. That item has not advanced. There is no new information on it yet.
Okay.
So we could add it if need be. Okay.
If that were to happen the way that I would anticipate that it would, based on previous things, that would be new direction from council coming.
So we could have a pending on there. Is there any advantage to that? Yeah, I don't see any. Okay.
It makes it easier for it to jump up from being a pending to a live item. The reason, for example, that the poetry ended up there is that there had been, in a public council meeting, that interest had been expressed, and so the commission was anticipating that direction was coming, and so making it easier on yourselves and the commission making it easier on itself to have that there so it could just jump up.
Okay. So
And
then
then
I
direction never
do
came.
recommend that we would put it on to say, assist and advise on Encinitas becoming a cultural arts. Thank you. Because
And there are-
if that is the case, then we would definitely want to be involved in that.
And there are two variations of that. One is the California Cultural District, which is done through the state of California, and the other that has been discussed in the cultural tourism meetings is whether or not it was something that became self-appointed.
Right.
In case that advised or informed the way that you wrote out your work plan
Great.
item.
And these are things too, I know for the ad hoc for speakers for our meetings. Obviously, like I think the bent is to have artists come, but as items come up, then relevant events would also, to have someone come speak to us on that point, whatever would be fine too. Okay, so that completes our action items and leaves 1 minute for your report. I'm sorry. Can we request another extension? No, not
No, I'm
beyond.
sorry. I can be really quick. Some of the most important things are Pacific View hours are extended till 5 o'clock. There's a lot of programming for the public to be interested in. Public art sculptures on loan are scheduled to be installed on February 13th and 14th. So that's really exciting. Music by the Sea, the January concert sold out. February 21st is the next one. Tickets are still available. It's an exceptional program. That's about it. Those are the high points before, don't want to go too deep. The calendar, looking ahead, Pacific View will be participating in the April, as of now, will be participating in the April 5th Art Night, and hours for Art Night have been amended. They will be 6 to 8 p.m.
Yay. Okay, thank you for that concise report. And we will conclude our meeting unless there's a commissioner report that wants to be done in 2 seconds. Nope. Okay. Thank you all for the focus, and looking forward to the next meeting. I'll adjourn it at 7:30. That's okay. Thank you. Oh, thank you.